Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Sandy Rosenthal with Beat the Big Guys podcast, and I'm so excited about my guest who's with us today. Her name is Marsha Jackson. Hello, Marsha.
Hi, Sandy.
Thank you so much for making time to be with us today.
Sure. Thanks for the invite.
You are so welcome. Now, Ms. Marsha Jackson is from Dallas, and I am going to give a little introduction before turning the microphone over to Marsha, who's going to tell us about what she's been up to, and it's big stuff. Marsha Jackson is a full-time employee with Dallas Area Rapid Transit and a retired manager from AT&T with over 30 years of service. Marsha is an environmental activist, guest speaker at various organizations discussing environmental injustice. Marsha received the 2019 Sierra Club Environmentalist Award, the 2020 recipient of SMU 55th Symposium Women in Profiles Award, and many, many, many others, too numerous to mention. Marsha is mother of 2 daughters, and she has 4 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. I'm so envious of you. So today we're going to hear about Ms. Jackson's leadership in the battle to take down Shingle Mountain. Take it away, Marsha.
Thank you, Sandy. Yes, in 2018, I moved in my house in September 1995. Never would think that I would go through what I did in 2018. We moved here, because my girls had horses, rural area, close to the job, close to home. And I came home one day in January 2018. My daughter said, "Mom, look what they're doing next door. They have these shingles." From those shingles grew from within a week or two, and they were almost like the top of my home. And people actually saw those shingles and they thought they had been here for years, and that wasn't the case. But they moved less than 100 feet from my bedroom. And just imagining that. So the shingles grew taller than my bed, my house. They were on top of front loaders, bounding and pounding all through the night. And so by me being a lady and single parent and just the girls here, so I wrote my 311 service request here in Dallas. When we have issues, that's what we do. So it was anonymous at first, but it grew so much, and they was disturbing us. We couldn't sleep, so I didn't no longer care about it being anonymous. So I sent them in again. Nothing happened. Constantly, nothing still happened. In July, it was just crazy. They had torn down the fence. The horses were getting out, and I asked them again, "Why y'all not doing anything? Why you close out my 311 service request?" And the lady said she told them they were in violation. They had to move across the street, but they moved back again. So in that, it got that July, that August 2018, it rained so bad that we flooded. My neighbors lost 2 horses, and my neighbor told them, "Listen, they blocked the creek with shingles, and they were driving back and forth from one property to the other, back and forth on a front loader." So just imagine, how that was. So we called the city of Dallas again. Nothing happened. So I kept calling. I'm trying to work and do the right thing, taxpaying citizen. So I went to a meeting at Lane Plating in November 2018, which is another pollutant here in my district, District 8. And I met a young lady, Tamika Duro, and I told them they protest in Lane Plating. What about down here on my area? I called and got no help. So she invited me to a meeting, and that's when I met Jim Scherbeck, a Downwinders. And I explained my story, and Jim came out the next day, and he just couldn't believe what he saw. So then he called Robert Walensky, the Dallas Morning News newspaper um, writer, and Robert wrote about 16 articles on this issue, and they the one that got to see their dogs are finally coming out here. But that didn't stop. Even though we did that, it was just a temporary conjunction, and they constantly started working all over again. The pollutants got so terrible. If I continue talking, Sandy, you might hear me in my voice, the rattling in my voice, because that's the effect that we have of the pollutants here. I permanent to be damage of my vocal cords. My neighbors next door also were affected because we were breathing in that dark soot from those shingles, ground up shingles. My neighbor worked for himself. So he had to end up taking off of work, spending some time losing money behind it because we thought it was allergies at first. We was going being tested for allergies, being $600 for tests. It wasn't allergies, and they determined it was the roof and shingles. I never had to go to a pulmonologist in my life before, and my doctor was saying that it's a slow killer, and that's what they're not. They wasn't understanding. They're just sitting there waiting and waiting, to something happen. And that was one of my goals and my push because my great grandsons, you can see, they were babies, and my great granddaughter, they could not come here to visit because it was affecting me at the age of 63 and 62. That what kind of effect it would have on the kids. Everybody talk about the COVID now, having to stay in. But my community been having to stay in, since 2018. So it's unhealthy for the kids. My neighbors had a playground for their kids outside. It's just a neighbor playground, but they can't go outside. So if anybody come down our street and see us, they would think it's no children out here. But because our kids have to stay inside all the time, even that smell was getting into the house. I had somebody donated us anonymous the humidifiers that we continue to keep on here. So even after we kept protesting, kept advocating, and then you see that Soledad Brown came down with a documentary. So that AJ Plus News, they also did a documentary, a Chapo, and Washington Post wrote their articles. Nothing was done until it went nationally. And that's the thing that I don't understand why you got to wait nationally when these are right here in your community. Take care of your community. My priority is the health of the community to help anybody, not only just my community, but the health. So therefore, we organize Southern Sector Rising, which represents districts 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. These are the pollutant areas in the southern and west part of Dallas, and they have the heaviest pollutants. Even in my district, we're still seeking, and it is 8 illegal companies here that violating their zoning, and that's another thing that we're working enforcing on the zoning. Um, restructure rezoning for the properties. So my passionate was to continue fighting, continue hearing our voice. I don't want anybody else's community to go through what we're going through. And that inspired me to go in and study for my doctorate. And that's what I'm doing now, and my doctorate in public administration.
Well, thank you so much. And that is often what drives us to step outside of ourselves and say, it's not about me. It's about people like my community, like my family, suffering from this. So what eventually did happen with Shingle Mountain?
In December 2020, they finally decided to move the Shingle Mountain. And what happened that they were in litigation with the property owner, not the business owner, because the business owner filed bankruptcy. And I wished it was something that can be done because they were able to walk away. And they harmed our health like that, like it was nothing to them, and made some, remarks about it. But anyway, CCR did pay the city of Dallas $1 million, and $450,000 of that was paid to a contractor. The contractor, the low bid, but he was concerned about our neighborhood. He's been watching it, and they
Oh,
did move all the shingles as of February 2021. The shingles were removed. After removal, it was assessed. That property has heavy lead there now also. And that's another thing that we're working on, the remediation of that property, because we're in a flood zone. And now where Shingle Mountain used to be, it's a big hole and it's filled with water. So my concern is that water filled with lead on that property ran off into the creek, and it's still running off into our property. During that time, TCEQ did test some of our properties, and I wasn't aware, but in their report, they test our properties, and they did find contamination on our properties. And that's a big concern because when you're animal lovers, that we have horses and have sheep and dogs and the chickens on our property, and so that leading off in that property, it could contaminate even more, and our animals are also involved besides our health. and that's what we continue advocating. We want that property to be remediated. And after also the remediation, our community is working, advocating for a Flora Forums Park there. What else can be there? That's a way of our community healing. We have nowhere to go. And our first concern on that part was for HKS, which is pro bono architectural. They designed this. They designed it with a heart from our community. We had a say so, and we never had a say so before, and that's a big plus for us. So they designed that floor for us, and we made sure that our safety was involved because on 310 where we live, it's heavy traffic. And that was what community concerns were our safety going into the park, and they designed our parking area so we wouldn't have to interact with that traffic coming in. Um,
Exactly.
Not only that, that we also are advocating for our community to be rezoned
Mhm.
because that is a big issue. I property here at our community, it is zoned as agricultural, but the property right next to me and my neighbors is zoned as RR and IM, which is heavy industrial. Even though it's heavy industrial, they try to bring that stuff right next to us. They still have to have a CO, which is certificate of occupancy, and
Sounds
the
like there
extra.
should be a law against agricultural being next to industrial, but I'm sure that's
Exactly,
a whole nother other conversation. But I'm sorry,
exactly.
but back to you. Um,
That's all, you're correct because even after May, this past May 2020, Almira, right next door to me, they decided they wanted to come back in again after they moved that ground up shingles that was on their property. They removed it themselves. They didn't access the property. What they did, they moved up the ground up shingles. They put white rocks on top of it. So when they had all the traffic, the trucks and trailers coming in there, it was airborne. Again, it was airborne, fiberglass airborne, and that was affecting us all over again. So immediately, I began sick. That week, my neighbors became sick, and it's like I'm never going to get over this stuff that we're going through. Well,
I have to stop you just for a second. So it's strangely poetic. You moved a mountain, okay, but that wasn't enough. It's like
right,
you would have thought, you would think, oh, I moved a mountain, I should be done now, but you're not.
no,
And in fact, it's you may be only, well, hopefully you're more than halfway there. Hopefully
right,
you're 90% there. But you're right, the where Mount Shingle Mountain was needs to be remediated. But fortunately, you now have a coalition, you have a group, you have a
mhm,
force. I like force. Don't you? That's the best.
yeah.
You've got a force that's been created due to the work that you began. I'm so
Right.
proud of. I'm proud to know you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And then even through the work, it's also important that you have to understand the zoning policies and regulations and guidelines,
Mhm.
because just as I was speaking, that Almira moved next to us, the city said they was doing exactly what they're supposed to do in the IRIM. That wasn't true. So therefore, we have consultants that's working with us, which is Jennifer Rahel and Ella Mayo. They're young, very, very talented and important young ladies. So they did the digging. They were not in violations. And after they find out, and my attorneys also, well, the city did say they were right. They were not in violation. So they were cited again and they had to cease business. But just recently, about 2 weeks ago, my 311 was closed where I said the violation. So the city of Dallas gave them a CO, a certificate of occupancy, right next door to us again. So that was another issue that we're going through again. Until
I'm
this
aware.
rezoning, this change, it won't. We're gonna continue to have these battles. We fought Shingle Mountain. We fight next door. Also within the time of Shingle Mountain, we fought 4 batch plants to not come in here in our community. So,
Well, on behalf of your community and all other communities in this country, which are often viewed as sacrifice zones, thank you for your hard work.
thank you,
And
Sandy.
hard is not strong enough a word.
Thank you.
Hard
Thank
is
you,
not
Sandy.
strong enough a word. Is it all right if I ask you a couple of
Sure.
questions?
Mhm.
Okay. Um, so you talked, the horses caught my attention. you know, it's our horses, which are part of our community, you know, parts of our families. And how were the horses affected? Was their health affected?
Yeah, as I said stated when we first had my neighbors lost 2 horses,
Oh,
and then he has a renter in, at his property, and she was very upset because she said, I think she had 2, I know 1 or 2 that died,
oh.
and for no reason, and that was the thing she wanna know, how come they didn't come out and test, even test for our animals, you know? People don't understand, our animals are our family,
Mhm,
you know,
mhm.
just
Yes.
like our children,
Yeah.
and that is, utmost importance
Oh,
also.
I'm so sorry. And I noticed that you said an anonymous person or an anonymous group donated the humidifiers. So how did it reach? Well, that I thought that was interesting. That why were they anonymous? Why did this group or this person not want their name associated with this movement, with this
I'm
resistance?
not I'm not sure, but you know what I did find out? He's
Uh-huh.
a big business owner, you know,
Uh-huh.
and the business is really he
Hmm.
also have interaction with the city. And so I guess I understand, but he followed up on me and we stayed in contact with me. And through this journey that I have been, I have found so many people that didn't even know me and I didn't know them. And it was just so tearful for them to come to us all different kind of races. You know, not some not don't even live in Dallas in the city of Dallas to come together and help us and support because the number one thing is the health of the community, you know, and that we did not have because I really didn't have my elected officials to come to me. I had one that wrote a letter during this time.
That you've touched on something that is uh I think one of the most beautiful things about rising up and resisting or striving for change, which isn't necessarily resisting, but often can be, and that is the people you meet and the friends you make.
Right, exactly. You know, just like I spoke of Jim Schoenberg earlier,
Mhm, mhm,
Jim didn't know me. He did not know me, but he did work tirelessly, nights, late at night, write op-eds, you know, write article, investigating. They had their scientists to come out here and they set up their own monitors, air monitors, you know, because I never did have anybody to monitor our air. But downwinders did set up the air monitor, and that's where it derived from. You know, Jim is persistent and he's also passionate. You know,
yes.
he gets so overexcited about the issues that care when it has something to do with someone's health,
M-
and that
uh,
is
Mr. Schoenberg, excuse me, was actually a guest on my show a couple of weeks ago.
okay.
Yeah, so
Very
I'm
good.
familiar with the work of Mr. Jim Schoenbeck, and it's called Downwinders at Risk is the name of his group that he started, and he's also host of a not he's also leads a academy, how to create change, and has a kind of an interesting name. I can't think of it at the moment, but I encourage all of you to check out the episode from a few weeks ago with my guest Jim Schoenbeck. And yes, now the people you meet, that's one of the most beautiful things. I have so many friends now, close friends that I never would have met were it not for my work, you know, exposing how the Army Corps of Engineers tried for a decade and spent millions and millions of dollars fooling the American public about the
Gotcha.
real reason that New Orleans flooded. So I
Wow.
met some wonderful people. So I also noticed, I couldn't help but notice that something you said, and I remember feeling the same way when you first start out fighting the big guys and trying to get something done, is you start out going, well, I just want to do the right thing. I'm going to be a good citizen and I'm going to follow the rules, and I'm not going to light torches, and I'm going to, and am I describing it right?
Yes.
How you
Mhm.
felt right in the very beginning. And it's interesting, and I felt the same way, but then gradually I needed to change my strategies. I needed to change my tactics. I needed to start requiring requests under the Freedom of Information Act.
Mhm.
I needed to do things that were bigger, but you're still being a good citizen.
Well,
right?
sometime, yes, and they do kind of take us out of our character a little bit sometime, especially when you get frustrated when you are trying to do the right thing and it's not working. So then you do have to kind of call them out sometime or bring it to their attention.
Mhm,
I think sometimes people kind of take advantage of that. They might think that you're not going to say anything, but what I had to do that I'm like I said, I'm a single parent.
mhm,
And who's supposed to take care of their family if there's nobody else around? These are my family. And where I came from, we're Christian and we're very close. If it wasn't for me protecting my kids, my flock, who else gonna do it? So that's my priority. I have to take care of my family. My other priority is my neighbors, my communities, because when we first started, they was fighting with us. But most of my neighbors are Latino, so it felt like they were getting retaliation of them. Either code was coming out, bother them for something, so they picked me as being a spokesperson. I've always worked in the community, always been behind the scene, but sometimes when things happen, it take you to move forward and to be the first one on the front line. Doing this, the eye activism, I have met so many people that did not know where to start,
mhm.
and they was like me, didn't have anybody to go to. So I think that's my passion to reach out to them because somebody has to have someone to talk to have to be a start to
Well,
other
not
to.
only are you a good citizen, you're a stellar, stellar
Thank
citizen.
you.
And so sometimes I wouldn't be, I'm going to alert and warn our listeners that some of these more aggressive tactics and strategies that need to be taken eventually, you'll be labeled as using high pressure tactics. Well, they're tactics. Well, they're strategies. Meanwhile,
Mhm.
you're being not just a good citizen, but a stellar citizen and
Right.
fighting for your community. And
Thank
and
you.
the big guys will say anything
Right.
to go after you personally. They'll say
Mhm.
anything. And that's a subject, like, it's another subject for a whole nother episode. If you'd like to come back, we can talk about that. Um,
Okay.
so you mentioned, I couldn't help but notice that you got reports. You received reports that there's still lead in the ground after Shingle Mountain was moved. How did you get your hands on these reports? How did that happen?
It's online. The city of Dallas, they had contractor geoscience, and it's like almost 300 pages, So it is online, and it did tell you the amount of heavy lead on that property, and that's what bothered me, Cindy. That
Mhm.
they know there's heavy lead on that property. Why are you not doing anything about it? You removed Shingle Mountain, but you just walked away, and it's still there, and nothing done about it.
So
You know,
there's two things not surprising. Um, One is, yeah, there's lead there and they knew it. But two, it
mhm,
was publicly available information. You would be surprised, all you listeners out there, how much is publicly available. It's there, but they don't expect you to look at it,
mhm,
right?
exactly.
They
Yes.
expect people are busy. People, the Dale Carnegie once said that all people are interested in three things: what they're doing in the next 10 minutes, what they're doing in the next 24 hours, and what they're doing in the next 7 days.
Mhm.
So people are busy. Okay, that's what he means by that. But all it takes is just looking something up and reading it and putting it out there. Not
Mhm.
It's not the answer to all things, of course, but you'd be
Yeah.
surprised how much information is available right there. Well, Marsha, we're almost running out of time. Is there anything else
Okay.
that you really feel you need to share with our listeners?
No, but I want to say thank you again for inviting me. But I do want the listeners to understand when you see anything going on in your community, any kind of pollutants, any kind of hazard, begin to call and report it. If you don't report it, bring it to attention. You have to take action on it. You might think you're being quiet or not going to say anything, but this is your health. It can happen to you in your community also. So
Yes,
thank
it
you.
can. And if anybody would like to learn more about Marsha Jackson's work in moving Shingle Mountain, what would you suggest they do?
We have a web page. It's www.southernsectorrising.org. We're also on Facebook. We're also on Twitter. It's Southern Sector Rising. And you can also just Google my name, Marsha Jackson, Google Shingle Mountain, and you can fill all the information. Also, if you have time, that you can also go in and look at dismantle, disrupt and dismantle. And that was the BET from Soledad O'Brien that did the documentary. We're also, if you're ever in Dallas, you're visiting, also at the Dallas Museum of Arts. It's an exhibition also with me, drawn by Ara Brill, and that's featured. It began December 26th, and it will be featuring through April 9th, 2023 at the Dallas Museum of Art in the Pink Room. So those are informations, and I would like for you guys to come out and support us. We're also going in for Floriforms Park. The art, we're still advocating and taking a fundraiser for this park, and we're advocating to the city of Dallas to donate that property to us, remediate it, so we can have a Floriforms on that and bring back the community that we had before. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for sharing that information. And I've done this myself, ladies and gents, everybody out there. If you just Google Marsha Jackson, Marsha spelled Marsha, just like it sounds, Jackson, and then Shingle Mountain, a lot of information will come up. Recent news events, just tons of information. So definitely be sure to check out the work of Ms. Marsha Jackson. And thank you again, Marsha Jackson, for joining me. And I hope all of you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on all of your favorite platforms. And remember, no matter who you are, you too can beat the big guys.
Thank you.
Okay, stay with me. I wish they would make the little buttons at the bottom of the screen bigger,